I want you to try something for me right now.
Mm.
It sounds simple, but just bear with me. Take a second and swallow.
You're really starting this deep dive by making everyone self-conscious about their own spit.
I absolutely am. And here's why. We treat it like it's nothing, You chew, you swallow, and your body just handles the rest. But if you actually look at the mechanics, swallowing is this incredibly complex neurological symphony.
No, but
You're engaging something like 50 different pairs of muscles and nerves, all firing in a perfect sequence just to move a bit of food from point A to point B without, choking you.
it's a high-speed conveyor belt that has
Yeah.
to coordinate perfectly with your breathing, with your vocal cords, with your stomach, everything.
Exactly. It's this automated system we just completely take for granted. But what happens when that automation glitches? What happens when the plumbing develops a mechanical failure?
Mhm.
Imagine if that system didn't just stop working, but it actually built a trap door, a literal hidden pocket in your throat where food gets hijacked, sits there, rotting,
Yeah.
and then comes back up when you least expect it.
That is a very visceral image, but unfortunately, it is completely accurate. Today, we're looking at a condition that sounds like some kind of obscure medical Latin Zenker's diverticulum.
Right.
But when you strip away the jargon, it's basically a structural blowout in the human neck.
And to guide us through this, we're looking at a fantastic lecture and case study from Dr. G.S. Rogers' YouTube channel. Specifically, we're diving into his really detailed breakdown on the pathology of the esophagus.
Dr. Raju is great because he doesn't just, throw an anatomy textbook at you.
Mm-hmm.
He anchors everything in a specific case. He makes you look at the patient first, then the plumbing.
Right. And that's our mission today. We are not just memorizing muscle groups. We're investigating a medical mystery. It involves an 82-year-old woman, a mysterious gurgling noise, and a hidden trap that doctors have to be incredibly careful to avoid.
Yeah.
Because as we'll see, trying to diagnose this the wrong way can actually make things catastrophic.
It really is a detective story where the anatomy itself is the culprit. You've got the clues, you've got the smoking gun, and you have a very high-stakes engineering fix.
So let's unpack this case. In Dr. Raju's source material, he introduces us to this central character. She's an 82-year-old woman, and she hasn't just had a tickle in her throat for a few days. This has been going on for 6 months.
And 6 months is a long time to live with the kind of misery she's describing.
Yeah.
Looking at her file, the primary complaint is dysphagia.
Now, dysphagia is the clinical term for difficulty swallowing. But digging into Dr. Raju's lecture, he makes a really massive distinction here. It's not just, I can't swallow. You have to figure out where the system is jamming.
Precisely. You have to triage the traffic jam. Oropharyngeal dysphagia. That would mean the trouble's right at the start, moving food from the mouth to the throat.
And if you have that, you're choking, you're coughing.
Yeah, maybe food comes out of your nose. It's messy and immediate.
Which sounds terrible, but that is not what she has. Her food clears the mouth, it gets into the throat. But
This sounds terrible.
It hits a wall. And this leads to the second symptom, which I thought was the most fascinating clue in the whole case. She tells Dr. Raju that after she eats, the food comes back up. Regurgitation.
Now, normally, if a patient tells a doctor food is coming back up, the doctor's brain immediately goes to one place.
GERD.
GERD. Acid reflux. It's the most common explanation by far.
Right, you just assume the valve to the stomach is loose. But the patient drops this one specific detail that changes everything. She says when the food comes back up, there is no acid taste.
And that right there, that is the smoking gun. It completely rules out the stomach.
Because if it had touched the stomach,
It would be acidic. It would burn. The stomach is a vat of hydrochloric acid. If you regurgitate food and it tastes like what you just ate, bland, undigested, not acidic, that tells the doctor definitively the food never got there.
it never reached the destination.
It got hijacked somewhere higher up.
It's stuck in a waiting room that just shouldn't exist.
Exactly. It's sitting in a reservoir above the stomach.
Mm.
And this explains the social aspect of her suffering, which is honestly, it's heartbreaking. She's embarrassed because her friends have told her she has bad breath. Halitosis.
Which makes perfect sense, right? If the food is stuck in a pouch in her neck and it's not being digested,
Yeah.
it's just sitting there.
Decomposing.
Yeah.
It's fermentation.
Mm.
She's walking around with a pocket of rotting food in her throat. That's going to cause a smell that no amount of brushing or mouthwash can fix because the source isn't even in the mouth.
And it's not just the smell. Dr. Raju points out a physical sign that you can actually feel. There's a swelling on the left side of her neck.
This is where the physical exam gets really vivid.
Mm.
Dr. Raju notes that when she presses on that swelling, the neck speaks back.
The gurgle.
The gurgle. It's the sound of air and fluid being squished around inside that diverticulum.
Yeah.
It's a tactile, audible confirmation that there is a sac there filled with, well, lunch.
That is such a wild concept that you could press on your neck and hear your lunch gurgling. But the stakes get way higher than just embarrassment. Her daughter mentions in the patient profile that her mom recently recovered from pneumonia.
And looking at the mechanics, we know this isn't a coincidence. This is a direct complication of that pouch.
Because if the food isn't going down to the stomach, where else can it go?
Gravity doesn't stop working just because you go to sleep. When she lies down at night, the contents of that pouch spill out. And since she's not swallowing consciously, that rotting material can slip into the airway.
Down the trachea.
Right into the lungs.
Aspiration pneumonia.
Exactly. The lungs are designed for air, not fermented food particles. It causes a massive infection. So Dr. Raju is connecting all these dots. The trouble swallowing, the regurgitation with no acid, the bad breath, the gurgle, the lung infection.
They all point to one mechanical failure.
Zenker's diverticulum.
So we've identified the culprit, but I want to get into the why. How does a pouch just form in your throat? I was looking at the diagrams in Dr. Raju's lecture, and it really looks like a structural conflict between two muscle groups.
It is a conflict. It's a pressure blowout.
Yeah.
To understand this, you have to visualize the anatomy around the voice box. You've got your cartilages, the thyroid and cricoid, providing the structure.
Okay.
And attached to them are the muscles that drive swallowing.
So who are the players here?
First, you have the inferior pharyngeal constrictor. Think of this as the big, broad muscle that squeezes the throat from top to bottom. It's pushing the food down. It's the propellant.
Okay, the pusher.
And right below that, you have the cricopharyngeus muscle. This one's different. It acts more like a valve, a gatekeeper at the top of the esophagus.
A gatekeeper.
Yeah, it stays tight to prevent air from getting into your stomach, and it's supposed to relax the absolute millisecond you swallow to let food pass.
So you have a pusher above and a gatekeeper below.
Correct. And in a perfect world, they coordinate seamlessly. Pusher squeezes, gatekeeper opens. But there's a tiny geometric flaw in human anatomy. Between the oblique fibers of the big constrictor muscle and the transverse fibers of the cricopharyngeus, there's a gap.
A weak spot.
A triangular area of weakness, a gap in the armor. Now imagine if that coordination gets out of sync. Say, the pusher squeezes hard, but the gatekeeper's a little slow to open. Or maybe the pressure in the throat is just consistently high over years and years.
That pressure has to go somewhere.
Physics dictates it has to find an outlet. And it finds that weak triangle, the inner lining of the throat. The mucosa starts to bulge out.
Right through the gap.
Right out through that gap between the muscles.
Like a hernia.
It is exactly like a hernia. The lining pushes out, it creates this sac. And once that sac forms, every single time you swallow, more food gets pushed into it, stretching it out further and further.
It becomes a cul-de-sac. A side road that leads nowhere.
And that's where the food gets trapped. Comes down the highway, sees this open exit ramp, takes it. It's dead end.
It just stays there.
That is the Zenker's diverticulum.
It's fascinating that it's just purely mechanical, a pressure system failure. So Dr. Raju has the diagnosis from the history, but he mentions you need to visually confirm it, and the first step is the barium swallow.
Yeah, this is the gold standard. You drink this chalky liquid that shows up on x-rays. In the video, Dr. Raju shows an image where the patient swallows, and instead of the liquid shooting straight down to the stomach, you see it just collect
in a puddle.
In a puddle in the neck. It fills the pouch. On the x-ray, it looks like this little bag just hanging off the back of the throat. That's your proof.
Okay, so you have the x-ray. Now, usually when doctors want to look at the throat or stomach, the next step is an endoscopy, right? Stick a camera down there.
Right.
But Dr. Raju gives this very specific, very stern warning about this. He basically says, for a patient with Zenker's, an endoscopy is entering the danger zone.
This is a critical point for patient safety. I mean, if you are a doctor and you suspect Zenker's, you have to be terrified of the endoscopy.
Why? I thought the camera was supposed to help you see where you're going.
It helps, but think about the geometry we just described. You're pushing a long, kind of rigid tube down a dark tunnel. You're looking for the opening of the esophagus, but the disease has created a decoy.
The pouch is the decoy.
The pouch opening is often wider. It's more obvious than the actual esophagus. So Dr. Raju warns that as you advance the scope into the hypopharynx, you will see the Zenker's sac, and you'll see the cricopharyngeal bar. That's the muscle wall separating the pouch from the real esophagus.
So you've got two tunnels. One is the road, one is the trap.
And if a doctor is rushing or just blindly pushing the scope trying to get past the resistance, they will almost certainly slide right into the pouch. And if they keep pushing,
What happens?
the wall of that pouch is paper thin. It's just mucosa. It doesn't have the thick muscle wall of the esophagus. If you push a scope against it, you will cause a perforation.
You punch a hole right through the throat.
Right into the mediastinum, which is catastrophic. It is a life-threatening emergency. Dr. Raju explicitly says, I have seen that happen in the past. It is an error caused by a lack of situational awareness.
So just pause there for a second. You have a patient with this fragile throat pouch, and the standard tool to look inside the scope is basically a battering ram if you aren't careful.
The diagnostic tool becomes a weapon. That's why Dr. Raju emphasizes identifying the anatomy before you push. You have to find that bar, the septum. You have to know which hole is the real esophagus.
Okay, let's assume they navigate the danger zone. They didn't poke a hole in the patient. They've confirmed the Zenkers. The 82-year-old woman is miserable. She needs a fix. How do we repair this plumbing?
This is the part that I think is just brilliant engineering.
Right, because usually if you have a growth or a sac in the body, the logic is cut it out.
Remove it. Exactly. An appendectomy, a tumor removal, you take it out. But here, Dr. Raju explains a management strategy that isn't about removal at all. It's about remodeling. The problem isn't necessarily that the pouch exists. The problem is that the pouch is separate from the esophagus, and that's what creates the trap. The problem is the wall between them.
The cricopharyngeal bar.
The septum, yes. So the endoscopic solution is surprisingly direct. You don't cut the pouch out. You cut the bar.
You slice the wall that divides them.
You slice that septum right down the middle. By doing that, you're essentially destroying the barrier between the pouch and the esophagus. You're merging them.
So you're taking two separate rooms, the hallway and the closet, and you're just knocking down the wall to make one big room?
Precisely. This is sometimes called marsupialization. You're opening up the diverticulum so that it just becomes part of the main road.
That is such clever workaround. So the food comes down, and instead of getting stuck in a cul-de-sac, it just slides into a slightly wider section of the highway.
Correct. Gravity can do its job again. The pouch tissue is still there, technically, but it's not a pouch anymore. It's just a wide spot in the road. The food flows freely down into the stomach.
And just like that, the system is restored. No more stagnation. No more rotting food.
And most importantly for our patient, a significantly reduced risk of that aspiration pneumonia. You've removed the reservoir.
It's amazing how such a mechanical fix solves such a complex biological problem. It really is just plumbing at the end of the day.
It is. But it requires such high-level precision. Think about what we just said, cutting the bar. You're using an electric knife or a laser inside the throat. You are millimeters away from the perforation we were just so afraid of.
It's a game of millimeters.
It is. If you cut too little, the symptoms come back. If you cut too deep, you breach the mediastinum and cause a leak. It requires a profound understanding of the depth of that muscle.
So bringing this all back to our listener, most of us probably aren't walking around with a pouch in our necks right now. But looking at this deep dive into Dr. Raju's case study, what are the big takeaways?
For me, the biggest takeaway is the value of the specific detail, that no acid clue.
It's such a small thing, it doesn't burn.
But that single sentence saves the patient from months of wrong diagnoses. If a doctor just hears regurgitation, they treat for reflux, they give pills, they wait.
And meanwhile, the pouch keeps stretching, the pneumonia risk keeps rising.
Exactly. But by listening for that no acid clue, you pivot the entire investigation from chemistry to mechanics. You realize the food isn't bouncing off the stomach, it's hitting a blockade.
It's a good reminder that our bodies are constantly giving us clues if we just know how to interpret them.
And it highlights the fragility of our own design. We rely on this perfect coordination of muscles, that inferior pharyngeal constrictor and the cricopharyngeus, just to eat a sandwich. A tiny delay in that coordination, a tiny gap in the fibers, and suddenly you have a mechanical failure that can ruin your quality of life.
It also gives me a newfound respect for the gurgle. I mean, I'm never going to look at a neck swelling the same way again.
It is a visceral sign, isn't it? The body speaking very, very literally.
We should also mention Dr. Raju ends his video by acknowledging the team that helped him present this case.
Yes, these deep dives don't happen in a vacuum. He thanked Dr. John Storline, Mr. Charles Budd, and Angela Dial for their production support. It takes a lot of work to document these endoscopic views so clearly that we can all learn from them.
Absolutely. Because without videos like this, understanding these mechanical failures would be so much harder. It turns a textbook concept into a real human story with a real solution.
And that's what medicine is, really. It's not just anatomy charts. It's the application of that anatomy to help an 82-year-old woman Stop being afraid to eat.
So here is where it gets really interesting to me as a final thought. We talked about the fix cutting the bar, we talked about the risk, but think about the courage involved there.
How so?
You are intentionally damaging a muscle cutting the cricopharyngeus to fix the system. You are breaking the gatekeepers to open the gate. It's this counterintuitive idea that sometimes to fix the body, you have to selectively disable a part of it that's, working too hard.
That's a great point. We think of healing as repairing, but sometimes healing is. It's strategic destruction. You remove the barrier, even if that barrier is your own muscle.
It really makes you appreciate the complexity of the human machine. We are this walking, talking, biological marvel, and sometimes a little trapdoor just opens up where it shouldn't.
And we're lucky there are experts like Dr. Raju who know exactly how to close it, or rather, how to remodel it.
Exactly. Dr. Raju's deep dive into Zenker's diverticulum is a reminder that sometimes the scariest symptoms, gurgling necks and breathing issues, have a surprisingly elegant mechanical solution.
And that listening, really listening to the patient, is the most powerful tool in the kit.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. Stay curious, respect the plumbing, and we'll catch you on the next one.